So I came to play. Echo.
Quads. Welcome back to the poker vlog. This is episode number 282. For this one, we're playing a very exciting meetup game at Best Bet in Jacksonville, Florida, and then also a $5,000 buy-in for the WPT Championship event out there. But before we get started, a couple things I want to say really quickly. In real time, I'm in the thick of it playing the WPT World Championship Series here in Las Vegas at the Wynn, and I'm actually right about to play the $10,400 buy-in event with a $40 million guarantee on it, and I'm putting Instagram updates out there, so follow my account. It's at Brad01 if you want to see up to the second kind of updates. Hopefully I'll make day 3, but if I don't, I'm gonna play my first ever live 25K buy-in, so I'm super excited about that. There's a lot of fun stuff coming up. Also, I've been putting out 2 videos a week on YouTube, so if you haven't checked out some of the earlier ones this month, be sure to go back and check those out because there's a lot of really good ones. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I fly into Jacksonville for my very first poker trip out here. Andrew and I have tried to host meetup games in northern Florida in the past, but the timing didn't quite work out. A visit to Best Bet is long overdue. We arrive at the property for a 3-5 mug, and I'm surprised at the sheer size of the room. It has way more space and tables than I anticipated. Our cash game event today is taking place as part of the WPT series that's in town. There's a $5,000 buy-in tournament that I'm planning to fire up to 3 bullets in, if necessary, to perhaps finally get my name on the Mike Sexton Champions Cup. I've been close with a couple deep runs and a final table before. Maybe this is the trip I can make it happen. Between the tournaments taking place and the normal cash games that they have going on, the place is absolutely packed. This is our section for the meetup game where we've got 20 tables of viewers who showed up to get their hands on some Bradley dollars. There's no dress code or anything, but this gentleman here wore his nicest shirt for the occasion. I buy in for $1,500, that's the special max for today. Normally the 2-5 is an $800 cap. The listed start time is 2 p.m., but there were 190 on the list this morning, and I wanted to make sure I played with as many viewers as possible, so I get started earlier than originally planned. We begin play at 120. Just a few hands in, we pick out pocket 10s in the cutoff. The under the gun player raises to 15. Calling or 3-betting are both reasonable options. Since the player under the gun will have a narrow range, I call. Small blind calls, the big blind calls as well. We're going 4 ways to the flop in position. The dealer puts out Queen Jack 10 rainbow. Right away, we've got a set with multiple opponents, but there are a lot of bad turn cards that'll downgrade our hand strength. Checks to us, we need to bet for value and protection. I bet 40. The small blind isn't too concerned about me having him beat or the 2 other players behind him having monsters. He calls. The big blind folds. Under the gun is the only player at the table who could have reasonably flopped the nuts with the pre-flop action, but he folds. It's down to heads up. The turn is the 4 of spades, putting a flush draw on the board. The small blind checks. For him to be the first caller on the flop, he must have a solid hand, probably a combo draw with equity, like king queen or king jack. I'd like to get as much money in now as possible while we should have the lead. I bet 175 to put as much pressure on the opponent as I can. Maybe it'll look like we're bluffing with a 10-9 suited type of hand. The opponent has seen me overbet bluff turns in past videos. He's tempted to stick around or potentially make a move. After mulling over his options, he folds. We make a huge hand. We only win a medium-sized pot though. Still, it's a good start to the session. In this one, we pick up ace-9 suited in the hijack. If I'm first in the pot, I'm always opening with suited aces, regardless of position or what my other card is. I raise to 15. The big blind is a younger player at the table. He calls for 10 more. We're heads up. The flop comes Jack 5 deuce rainbow. The big blind checks. We may or may not have the best hand. I bet 20 to see if we can win this without making a pair. The big blind won't let us take it down without at least a little resistance. He calls, but doesn't seem that strong. The turn is the 6 of diamonds, giving us a flush draw. The big blind checks. A lower card could have helped improve the opponent's hand, but there won't be any 4-3 combos in my opponent's range other than suited ones. You saw the overbet we made in the previous hand with the set. Here we make an overbet of 90 as a semi-bluff. If the opponent calls with a jack or better, we can still hit a diamond to make the nuts, or maybe even an ace could give us the best hand, but we can hopefully get plenty of 1-pair hands to fold so that we don't need to see a river at all to win money. The big blind surprisingly puts in the check raise to 225. It's a small sizing, and I'm not really buying that the opponent has a set like he's representing. Younger players at meetup games tend to come after me.
I considered jamming, but there's not much reason to do that when we're getting a great price with plenty of good cards that'll give us the best hand, and the opponent is almost definitely going to shove almost any river with a few hundred that he has remaining in his stack. I call with implied odds in mind. The dealer puts out the deuce of clubs, pairing the board and reducing the amount of set combos that the opponent might have check raised with. We brick it, the big blind rips it anyway for 345 total. This seems strange, but I can't call with ace high because I'm even losing to some of the hands that he might have turned into a bluff. I fold, I lift the camera up to get a shot of the board, and as I stop recording, the opponent reveals that he made his play with pocket fours that he turned into a bluff because he was blocking the straight. I admire the heart, but he had the best hand the entire way. It's too bad we weren't able to make a flush. At this time, a viewer comes over to give me a book on being a first-time dad after hearing me recently discuss on stream that my girlfriend of 5 years is pregnant and is due in March. This is the first time I mentioned that I'm having a son in a proper vlog before. I can't wait. We're naming him Henry Michael Owen. Henry's my girlfriend's father's middle name, and Michael's my dad's first name. I tend not to discuss much about my personal life, but a lot of you know my dad passed away last year. We've been trying to expand the family since then, and with my girlfriend being 36, we decided to do things a little out of order due to time constraints and health risks, but we'll get married eventually when my girlfriend will be able to fully enjoy the wedding. Anyway, this is a very thoughtful gift. In addition to the book, everyone in attendance receives a mug with my mug on it. Pretty cool keepsake. At the second table of the night, we pick up pocket fours and a $25 seven-handed double board bomb pot. The first flop is Jack 6-5 with two spades. We only have an underpair and a backdoor straight draw there. The second flop is 7-5-4 with two diamonds. We've got bottom set. The small blind bets 40. This isn't all that great of a hand because we're only strong on one board without much chance of improving on the top board, and we don't have the nuts, but it's tough for the small blind to have us beat on both boards unless he has 8-6, pocket 7s, pocket 5s, or 6-3. It's too early to fold for such a small sizing. I call. What I don't want to see is multiple players call behind me because then I may not end up with the best hand anywhere. The cutoff and button both call. I don't like it. I'm going to be looking for ways to get out of this if we don't drastically improve so that we avoid getting scooped. The top turn is the 4 of spades, giving us a set on both boards, but several straights get there as well as the spade flush. The bottom turn is the 9 of clubs. It's pretty much a blank since no new straights get there and diamond draws don't improve. The small blind slows down and checks. It's really tough for an individual opponent to have us beat on both boards unless we're up against pocket 5s or 8-6 or 6-3 of spades. That's only 3 total combos, and we'd still have full house outs against straights and flushes. I bet 225. Again, we don't want to get called by multiple players because one player could have a flush, and the other player could have a set of 7s or a straight on the bottom board. We'd be more likely to get scooped rather than if we only get called by one person. The cutoff folds. I'm glad that we have one less player to worry about. The button doesn't take too much time to follow suit. He folds as well. At worst, it'll be heads up, which is a huge relief. But the small blind also folds. I don't recall ever having 2 sets in a hold'em double board bomb pot. I've got to show this one. It's pretty rare that it happens. I'm even happier that it actually allows us to scoop the pot when we had 3 opponents and 2 coordinated boards. We pick up pocket 9s in the big blind a while later at our third table of the session. This table's been lively with lots of straddles, including in this hand. I lost several pots earlier here after calling pre-flop raises and missing, which led me to adding on for 500 without anything too interesting happening. I'm in for 2,000 total on the day, and I'm stuck a little. Under the gun +1 limps in for 10. It's always a bit uncomfortable raising with a hand like 9s from the blinds, knowing that we'll likely end up seeing a flop from out of position, which can be tricky if overcards come out and we don't improve. But we need to do it anyway with what should be the best hand, at least at the moment. I raised to 50. A viewer named Mike, who I didn't get a chance to play with, is heading out early, but he stopped by right before this hand started to say hi and grab a quick photo. We need to see if he's good luck.
Mike, you want to sweat?
With Mike's help, hopefully we can get the win. The under the gun straddler calls, under the gun +1 calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. It comes Jack 6-4 rainbow. We've only got second pair, but maybe the other 2 players don't have much either. We all check. The turn is the queen of hearts, downgrading us to third pair. I check. Under the gun sees an opening. He bets 80. Under the gun +1 folds. Even though the board is getting worse and worse for us, I get the sense that the opponent's semi-bluffing with a heart draw. Plus, I've got a lot of faith in Mike as a lucky sweater. I make a speculative call since our hand is slightly under-repped after checking the flop. It's down to heads up. The river's the 8 of diamonds. It doesn't really help us except we have removal to 10-9 for the straight, which we could potentially represent. I'm not exactly sure. We need to turn our hand into a bluff though. I thought the opponent had a heart draw and hearts missed, so my plan is to call if under the gun bets again. He can't credibly rep too many strong hands. The opponent would have 3-bet with jiggities or ace-queen pre-flop. He would have bet on the flop with queen-jack or a set after I checked as the initial pre-flop raiser. So there aren't any plausible hands better than 2-pair that he'd have, and he might check back queen-10 or worse. A bet will feel a lot like a bluff. The opponent's name is Chuck. Chuck gives up, and he checks. We turn over our pair. It's good. Under the gun briefly flashes ace-10 of diamonds for a gut shot Broadway draw that bricked before mucking his cards. We get the win. I'd love to take all the credit, but it was really a team effort. Mike's sweating 1,000 on the floor.
Good sweat, Mike.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Made the vlog,
Yes.
It's a fun atmosphere at this table, but I can't stay forever. I head to the next table where we've got 5-4 suited in the big blind as soon as I sit down. The player in middle position limps in with the short stack. The cutoff raises to 25. The button calls. I call for 20 more. The middle position player calls as well. We're going 4 ways to the flop out of position. It comes 4-4 deuce rainbow. We've got trips immediately at this new location. Unfortunately, everyone checks. The turn's the 3 of diamonds, giving us an open-ended straight draw to go along with our 3 4s. We can't allow this to check through again. I bet 75 for value. The middle position player is contemplating what to do. It's a little scary for us because he only limp called the raise pre-flop. A lot of people tend to take this line with small pocket pairs or small suited connecting hands, so on a paired board with all low cards, it's very possible that this opponent could already have a full house or a straight. He calls. It's also possible that he just has something like pocket fives or maybe a diamond flush draw. The initial pre-flop raiser calls in the cutoff. The button calls as well. After no one showed interest on the flop, all 3 of our opponents are willing to call a larger sized turn bet. We may not be best. The river is the 4 of diamonds, giving us quad 4s in an incredible spot. I bet 400, which will probably look like a wild bluff because our line is kind of ridiculous. We didn't 3-bet pre-flop, so we'll rarely have pocket pairs like 10s or better. We bet on the turn, indicating that we had a straight, a small full house, or trip 4s. With a third 4 out there, our hands like pocket 3s and pocket deuces get counterfeited, and a straight is more worthless than an NFT collection. The big bet looks like I've got exactly quads or complete air. The middle position player only has 225 in his stack. He's getting over 40% off the retail price. That's a bargain that he can't turn down. He calls. The cutoff folds quickly. The action's on the button. He only has 335, so he'd be getting a discount as well. The button saw the middle position player struggling to decide whether or not to call, so maybe the middle position opponent doesn't have much, and it's pretty unlikely that I'm going to river quads. It's very possible the button talks himself into looking us up.
Well, I came to play. I call.
Quads.
Nice.
We get called by the middle position player's 6-5 of hearts, which was a turn straight. I've got some NFTs to sell that guy. And then we also get called by the button's pocket 8s and a 3-way all-in while we've got the nuts. I don't think that I've ever stacked multiple players with quads before. To the button's credit, he takes the loss better than anyone I've ever seen.
You come to Savannah, dinner's on me.
Oh, nice, man. Wow. Thank you, man.
It's awesome to play these cash game events and be around people with such good attitudes, even when they get stacked. If I'm ever in Savannah, which is on my list of places to visit, I'll definitely check out Chizito's Latin Cuisine to redeem the dinner for 2. In the meantime, I'm glad to finally make a strong hand and get paid off. This win gets us all the way out of the hole. We're up over 600. It's nice to have some profit to work with. In this one, we've got ace-10 suited in the under the gun straddle. A player in middle position makes a big raise to 50. He's shown some hands down that were pretty out of line. The small blind calls. This is JR, the opponent who gave us the dinner for 2. He just rebought for a small amount. I call for 40 more to close the action. 3 of us are still in contention. The flop comes 9-7-4 with 2 spades. We've got the flush draw with 2 overs and a backdoor straight draw. The small blind checks. I check. The middle position player might have a strong hand. He bets 75. The situation escalates as the small blind raises all in for 175. It's kind of a weird spot. I'm uncomfortable cold calling the shove because then our hand would essentially be face up. I re-raise to 400 to isolate the small blind and perhaps get the middle position player to fold an overpair if that's what he's got. It'd be hard for the middle position player to call with only 1 pair, regardless of what it is. I really don't want to see a shove though. After about 20 seconds, the initial pre-flop raiser folds. It's heads up with JR. We flip our hand over first, figuring we could be behind. The turn is another 9. It's no help. At least it doesn't seem that way at first. Then the opponent shows 6-5 of spades. He flopped a flush that's no good, as well as a straight draw, plus any 6 or 5 will give him the win. The river's the queen of diamonds. Neither of us improved, but our ace high is the best hand. We stack JR for the second time. I have mixed feelings about it. He's a nice guy, so I'd like to see him have a good session, but he doesn't offer me an additional free dinner for 2 after this hand, which is kind of bullshit. If I find myself in Savannah with a party of 4 and I'm looking for some Latin cuisine, I guess I'm going to have to go elsewhere. The session is turned around after early woes. Now we're up 800 and we're on a roll. Next we've got King 9 suited on the button. The cutoff limps in for 5. If he's limping in from this late, he can't have anything that good. I raise to 20. The small blind calls, the cutoff calls as well. 3 of us are seeing the flop. The dealer puts out King 5-4 with 2 clubs. We've got top pair without all that great of a kicker. It checks to us. I'm concerned that either player could reasonably have a set of 4s or 5s given how this has been played. Our hand isn't good enough to get value on all 3 streets anyway. I check for pot control, deception, and to induce some bluffs. If it checks to us again, we can feel good enough about our top pair to bet for value on the turn and potentially the river. The turn is the 4 of hearts, pairing the board and reducing the amount of sets that we could be up against. The opponents both check. There's no reason for them to slow play big hands after a check through on the previous street. Nearly every hand better than King 9 would have bet by now. I'm almost certain that we've got the best hand. I bet 50. It's on the larger side, but after we checked back the flop, what good hands will we really have? My line looks fishy, which should allow us to get called by way worse hands like small and medium pocket pairs, and maybe some flush draws. Small blind calls, it's possible that he could have something like pocket 8s, ace 5 or 6-5 suited, or maybe 2 clubs. The button also calls. I put him on the same range of hands. The river's the queen of spades. I like this card because in the off chance that one of the opponents has King Jack or King 10, we'll be chopping rather than losing. Checks to us once again. I doubt either opponent has King Queen or better. We should be splitting this pot at worst. I bet 220, hoping that maybe someone will have Queen 10 of clubs or something like that, and they'll call us light. It looks a lot like I'm trying to buy the pot, but really, I'm betting big for thin value. The small blind falls right into our trap. He calls to avoid possibly looking like a fool, getting bluffed on the vlog. The cutoff folds. I turn over the King 9, showing that I was betting for value. Small blind shockingly shows ace 4 of spades. He turned trips and played it sneaky. I definitely didn't expect to see that after the opponent checked on the turn. It's a brutal runout that causes me to pay a premium for the economy experience while heading to Value Town. I lose several hundred. Here we're dealt 10-9 suited in the hijack. Under the gun +1 raises to 15. A player in middle position calls. I call. The button calls and the big blind calls. We're going 5 ways to the flop. It comes King 3 deuced with 2 clubs. We've got a flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. The big blind checks. Under the gun +1 liked the size that he made it pre-flop. He goes with the same $15 bet. The middle position player folds. I'd be thrilled if we can see a turn card while getting 6-1 with our draw. I call. The button is an aggressive player who I mentioned earlier got to showdown with some out of line hands. He raises a 60. The big blind and under the gun +1 fold. The action's back on me. It's still only $45 to see a turn. I'm okay with it. I call. We're heads up. The turn's a 10 of diamonds. We improved, but not quite the way that we hoped. I check. The button goes with a bet of 100. We have removal to King 10, and the opponent didn't 3-bet pre-flop like he would have with pocket kings or ace king, so the value hands that he's representing are mostly sets of 3s and deuces. After some of the things that I've seen from him earlier, I'm not sure he's going to have those strong hands all that frequently compared to how often he'll be bluffing. Our pair of 10s could be good on its own. I'm even happier to stick around since we've got a flush draw as well. I call to see the river. The dealer puts out the ace of clubs. It's the best card in the deck. Not only do we make a flush, some of the higher flush draw semi-bluffs that I was worried that the opponent could have are no longer possible for him, like ace 5 and ace 4 of clubs. The only realistic hands that the opponent might have that are beating us is Queen Jack of clubs, since the 10 and 9 of clubs are accounted for, and the button shouldn't have called a pre-flop raise with Queen 8 or Jack 8 of clubs. I go with a large bet of 400 to target lower flushes, straights, sets, 2-pair combos, and pairs of aces that were semi-bluffing like ace 5 and ace 4. The problem is that it's tough to get called because I'll almost never be bluffing in this situation. I'm having a hard time even imagining any other hand that I could have except a flush. The opponent has taken a very long time to think about his options. Then he finally gives us a hint as to what he's got.
Keep hearing any good here?
I give no response. I'm just wondering what two pair the button could possibly have that he'd play this way. We have removal to hands containing a 10. He shouldn't really have king 3, king deuce, 10-3, or 10 deuce. He didn't 3-bet pre-flop, so he won't have ace king. Raising on the flop with ace 3 and ace deuce is pretty wild. I'm having flashbacks of assembling dressers from IKEA. There's another situation in which it's hard to put everything together. After about a minute and a half, the opponent makes the fold. Who knows what the opponent had? He didn't show, so I make him wait for the vlog as I leave the cards face down while we drag in the pot. But then I tell him shortly after that I had 10-9 of clubs. I'm not good at making people wait. We've got one meetup game table being live streamed. I get pulled to play in it while Alex Torelli gets rotated around the outer tables. In this one, the player under the gun limps in for 5. We've got ace 10 offsuit under the gun plus 2. Normally, I may just fold this hand from early position, especially after the under the gun limp, but we're on stream. It's more fun for viewers if I slightly expand the range to get involved as much as possible. I raise to 25. The button, big blind, and under the gun all call. We're going 4 ways to the flop against people who are clearly out to get me based on what they're calling pre-flop raises with. The flop comes queen 9-6 with 2 clubs. We've got 1 over and some backdoor draws. The big blind checks. Under the gun makes a small bet of 30. Again, I'm in a situation in which it's totally reasonable to get out of here and fold, but there are a lot of cards that can help us improve, including any club, 7, 8, 10, jack, king, or ace. I call the small bet with plans of probably turning our hand into a bluff at some point, particularly if a club comes out. The button calls. The big blind has king 8 and calls as well. I'm not really sure what his plan is. This hand is like the opposite of the movie Gigli. No one's leaving in the middle of it. The turn is the 10 of diamonds, giving us second pair. Checks to us. I'm not sure we're best, but one of the other players may have turned a straight, so I'm not interested in bluffing when we don't have removal to the nuts and we have 3 opponents. The button checks back. The river's the 6 of clubs, giving us a pathway to win in this one. The big blind and under the gun check. Up to this point, I played this hand exactly like I would have with ace-x of clubs. I'm going to rep the nuts, harder than the planner's mascot, give me a top hat and a monocle. I bet 180 after seeing plenty of weakness from our opponents. Maybe I can get a pair of queens to fold, or even 2 pair in the rare instances that we happen to be up against anything that strong. The button folds. The big blind Tony has a short stack. He completely loses his mind, calling with king 8 offsuit. I can't imagine a single hand that he could think I'm bluffing with that he beats. Maybe he misread his cards because this play is pretty ambitious. The under the gun player folds. For the moment, I think that I've gotten caught bluffing, but our pair of 10s is better than good enough to win it. Well, not quite. The opponent actually has king jack offsuit for a straight. There was an issue with the card reader. I lose a couple hundred in that hand, trying to make a play holding a key blocker. With just a few hands left of the stream, under the gun raises to 20. We've got ace jack offsuit on the button. I call. The opponent on our left is getting a discount. He calls in the small blind. The big blind has 2 cards with shapes, numbers, and colors, so he justifiably calls for 15 more with a hand that can easily make the nuts if 3 3s or 3 6s happen to come out. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It comes jack 10 deuce rainbow. We've got top and a lot of equity. Checks to us. We've got to bet for value and to charge straight draws and other hands containing an over. I bet 50. The small blind has a straight draw that he doesn't want to have to hit. He puts in a tiny check raise to 135 in an attempt to steal the pot with 9 high. The other 2 players don't have much. They fold. The action's back on me. The small blind doesn't have a whole lot left. I figure he's either going to have me crush with jack 10 or a set of deuces, or he's going to be bluffing with a straight draw of some sort. If the small blind has a gutter with 9-7 suited, king 9 suited, or queen 8 suited, I want to let him bluff off his stack on the turn if it's a brick. I call with plans of calling a turn shove. The dealer puts out the 7 of diamonds. I'm drawing dead. The small blind smashes it, hitting the 1 card that'll get him paid because if a queen came, it'd be a lot easier to get away from. The small blind follows through with a jam. I snap call with no hope. I'm not surprised to see the straight. I was just hoping that the opponent was going to have one of several other straight draws instead. The river's another 10. It's inconsequential. My time on the stream isn't particularly fun. I wasn't in any great situations to go for value, and I kept running into the nuts on the turn and fairly big pots. My profit for the day is wiped out as the meetup game is officially over, but there are still tables running that me and Andrew haven't gotten to yet, and I'm stuck a small amount. We're going into OT. We pick up ace-king offsuit under the gun +1 at an outer table. I raise to 15. Under the gun +2, 3 bets to 45. He's going to regret that decision. We have removal to aces and kings. We're likely best or flipping it worse. I 4 bet to 150. The opponent wastes no time at all. He basically snap calls for 105 more. He wouldn't do that with a hand like aces, kings, or even queens. It's possible that we have the same hand though. We're heads up out of position. The flop comes queen 10-3 all clubs. We've got the ace of clubs and a Broadway draw. We'd still be up against some strong hands like ace queen, pocket tens, and maybe pocket queens if my read pre-flop was incorrect. I down bet to 100. Under the gun +2 mistakenly takes this bet as a sign of weakness as he raises to 350 like he's going to push me around as if I'm some sort of punk. Sure, he could have a real hand, but he definitely doesn't have the nuts. It'd be amazing if the opponent has ace king with the king of clubs. We can get it all in basically as a free roll. I'm willing to gamble. I rip it for 1250 effective. The opponent only has 900 left in his stack on top of his raise, and there's no snap call like I imagine there would have been if he had a flush or a set. It looks like we've either got the best hand or the opponent has been caught making a move with one pair. Without knowing exactly what we're up against, I prefer to see it fold in order for us to be back up a few hundred without having to improve, but I wouldn't mind a fun all-in pot to cap off the night with some drama either. Finally, the player on our left folds. We show him that we got the semi-bluff through. He tells me that he somehow had a small pocket pair. I'm surprised to hear that he took such an aggressive line, but it works out for us. We get back in the black holding just ace high. After playing for a little while longer, it's time to rack up. Played for about 7 hours today. I won $70, really up and down day. Started out, in the hole a couple hundred and then made that quads hand. That was awesome to put a big bet out there on the river and get called in 2 spots. So that's something that doesn't happen very often. And then unfortunately didn't run too well on the stream and kept running into streets and that wasn't good. So I think I lost several hundred on the stream. I was in the hole when I left, but played a few more tables. I think we had 20 tables or something. I think we had over 200 people show up, so just a huge turnout in Jacksonville and a lot of energy. So it was a cool atmosphere. Now I get to just relax and enjoy the night. There are a couple guys who showed up towards the end of the night who I didn't have a chance to play with. I have a drink with them at the bar. Though I didn't win much, it's been a great night, and the trip isn't over. The next day I buy into the $5,000 championship event. I've been looking forward to this tournament for the last several weeks. I give updates on Instagram showing that I got off to one of the worst starts imaginable. The very first hand I'm dealt, I lose half my stack in what's actually a 3-bet pot with ace-king suited. I flopped the nuts with a flush, then got check raised. I just called to trap the opponent. The board paired on the turn, which I didn't like seeing. I called a big bet. Then the river double paired the board with another queen coming out, reducing our flush to a pure bluff catcher. The opponent fired big once more and I folded. I let the opponent know that I wasn't filming and was just planning to give Instagram updates. He said that he would have shown for the vlog, but that I made a nice fold. After that, I get it in pre-flop for about 25 big blinds with ace-king against pocket eights. The flop comes 9-4 deuce with 2 clubs. We don't hit, but we've got backdoor flush and straight draws at least. Turn is the 4 of spades, shutting the back door in our face. The river is the jack of clubs, which knocks us out. I lose without ever having a real opportunity to build a stack. WPT covers the first bullet for most of my events. I'm ready to play it again though. I re-enter on my own dime for 5,000. The structure is great and the field is really soft for a buy-in this high, so I'm easily able to justify taking another shot. A few hands in with our second bullet, I cold 4-bet jam ace-king offsuit for about 45 big blinds from the small blind, and I get called by ace-queen offsuit. We have the opponent absolutely dominated with a great chance to double up. The flop comes 9-6-3 rainbow. There's nothing to worry about. We just need to avoid a queen. The turn is the 6 of clubs. It's another brick. The river is the devastating queen of clubs. We only needed to fade 3 cards but couldn't do it. It's absolutely brutal to lose another 5,000 this way just minutes after getting knocked out with the same hand and losing a massive pot to start with ace-king. I fire one more bullet because I know things have to turn around eventually. After triple barrel bluffing off over half my stack and getting called light, I get it in for 13 big blinds with king 10 suited against queen 8 of clubs on a queen jack 3 rainbow flop. We've got an open-ender and one over with plenty of equity. The turn is another queen, eliminating my one pair outs. The river's the 5 of spades, knocking me out for a third time in a short period. It's one of the most rough days that I've ever had in a tournament. I lose $15,000 worth of buy-ins, $10,000 of it's my own money. It's disappointing because I was really anticipating this event, but sometimes we just don't get the cards. There are at least plenty of opportunities to get big scores during the WPT World Championship all throughout December, which is my favorite tournament series of the year.
That's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons. Helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. And feel free to share your worst bad beat story with me. I'm excited to see some of those. Let's see. Thanks to everybody who came out to Best Bet in Jacksonville. Andrew and I had a great time. It was a long overdue trip. I'd always heard a lot about that place, but didn't have a chance until what you saw in this video to go out there. I'm right in the middle of the WPT World Championship Series. I'm about to fire in the World Championship event. It's a 10K buy-in and I'm very excited about it. Last year I had my biggest live score ever at the time in this same event. It was 99,000. I made day 5. I got 35th out of 2,960 entries or something like that. So hopefully I can replicate that, but if I don't make day 3, I'm gonna be firing in my first ever live 25K buy-in, so I'll be playing against the best in the world, and that'll be really cool and interesting. So I can't wait for that too. Follow along on Instagram. My account is @Brad01. I'm giving updates in all the tournaments that I'm playing, and I'm putting out 2 videos a week this month, so go back and check out some of those other ones if you haven't seen them yet. All right, guys, hope you're all doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Good luck at the tables, and I'll see you next time.